Do we want to do shame and judgment in a pandemic?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so hey, you know what? Can you do the intro?
Sure. Hey guys, welcome to Pocket Pardon My French Quarantine Edition number 2. Here with me today, we have our favorite group of women of all time. I've got Veronica on my left-hand side and Garance down on the bottom of the screen. And I'm Emily, coming to you live from Wellfleet, Massachusetts.
Down under.
Oh, that really does work.
And I'm in
Wellington,
Southern Hemisphere. York Bay. Huh? What? Oh, I can't. Can you? Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened. What did you say, Veronica?
Oh, I said it really works that you're in the Southern Hemisphere, and on our screens, you're on the bottom of the screen. It's frozen again on her side. Although I did like this face. I don't think I can recreate that as well.
No, I couldn't do it. Okay, so I have a subject for today.
Great.
Okay.
I want to talk about the shaming online, and that apparently there is a right way to quarantine and to talk about, and it took celebrities a few weeks to get it. And some of them made some funny mistakes. I think I'm not really connected to all the gossip and all that, but the one from Ellen DeGeneres came to my attention, where she compared being in quarantine with being in a prison, and then did kind of weird comment about everybody was gay in her house and it's like in prison and all that, and she got a lot of shit for it, which I understand. But at the same time, I think like we're really in a moment where it's even more than ever, there is the thought police, you know, like the attitude police of what you can do and what you can be. And so, yeah, I wanted to know your thoughts about that, and to debate.
I have personal experience with this. So
go.
I've been more active on Instagram while I've been here because I'm bored and I don't know what else to do with my time, and so I'm on Instagram more than I have been, and I'm posting more than I usually do because I don't really post very often. And a couple weeks ago we were watching like PBS or something, and basically Josh and I were joking about how we've become like really old people in our quarantine, where we listen to NPR on the radio in the morning and we watch like PBS programming in the afternoon, and we like sometimes will take a leisurely evening walk for sunset. And I made a joke that we were like living our best lives right now, and someone sent me a DM being like, you know, you're in a mansion and, you know, you like are living your best life, but people are dying and you shouldn't be talking about how good you have it and all of this stuff. And I was like, seriously? Like, first of all, learn to take a joke. And second of all, I obviously am aware of all of those things that are happening and that I'm in a privileged situation, but I didn't think I had to qualify everything I talked about on Instagram with my small following of people by saying like, I know I'm not a frontline worker. I know I'm not this. I know I'm not that. Don't judge me for what I'm saying. It really pissed me off.
Yeah, there's definitely a thought police going around right now in the way in which you express yourself. It's such a fine line. It's so hard, in that we still want to make jokes and we still want to kind of like, you know, feel some semblance of normal, but that semblance of normal is so drastic for people right now. Like, I think what quarantine and what COVID has really highlighted for me is like differences in class economically more than anything else.
Totally.
And because it's highlighting differences in class,
but it's also,
go ahead.
It also doesn't, because like I'm conscious about the differences in class even outside of COVID, and I think you guys are.
Yeah.
You know, I think what's amplified is the judgment and all that. And I'm not saying we should all like like flaunt like what we have and all that. I've never been about that, but I feel like, are people just waking up that there is differences, you know, that some people have less access to health and to money, and that they live in small apartments, and that they can't buy food, and that they're very fragile, and that when any like financial crisis happens, they're going to be hurt really bad. I mean, it's like everybody woke up that this is happening, and I'm like, okay, I understand it's crystallizing moment, but Ellen DeGeneres was already the way she is, and she was already showing her houses and all that like before. So I don't know. I do we have to be different? I mean, it's really a question. I just don't understand. I just feel like it encourages people not being honest and not being themselves.
Well, I think
and being condescending.
We were talking earlier,
instead of being authentic.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, you and I, that we're actually really enjoying this time that we're having right now. And after that person left me that comment, I felt like, oh, should I feel guilty that I actually am enjoying this time that I'm having to like work and be productive and to spend really good quality time with my husband and to be in a place that I love? Because, you know, I don't know, it just felt like it wasn't okay that.
And yeah, and also to frame well, and also to frame this even more clear, like this doesn't mean that you don't have financial, you know, issues of your own or things like that, which I think, you know, I don't know, like I've seen different people reacting really differently to this issue. I know that we as a company haven't talked about our problems that we're encountering and that are really real. Some people have done campaigns to get help from other people. I'm not judging, but I'm just saying like, there is not one attitude to have. And are you going to profess everything? Like, should we be like, yeah, we're like having trouble, but we're still allowed, like able to enjoy ourselves through this thing? And I think that's in, you know, you're talking about one comment, and that's, I get that a million times, like, you know, all the time. And I've been talking about the fact that it's hard, you know, because it kind of breaks your wings of what you want to share and how you want to share it and your authenticity. And I feel like we're becoming a fucking like generation of condescending pricks, you know, that you're like, oh, let's not talk about the fact we're happy. Let's not talk about the fact that, you know, we I don't know. I just feel like it's, the level is everybody's trying to level, and it's making things quite boring actually.
Yeah, I think that definitely we're all forgetting that there should not be comparative suffering. Like you cannot compare one's suffering or one's grief to another suffering and grief. Like everybody has their individual things that they are suffering or grieving or dealing with. And if you try to put them on a pedestal of like, oh, they're dealing with more. No, everybody has an individual like bubble that whatever grief they're going through is their biggest grief because it is their grief. And so you can't then compare it outward towards other people. It just makes it, then you're going to put grief on a scale and you're going to put suffering on a scale. And that I think is also not the best thing. And again, gets you to a point where you're judging.
Yeah. Go ahead, G.
No, I agree. I think not only this, but it's also when you push so much guilt on people, it's kind of what happened with like, it's a bigger thing, but like, you know, the election of Trump and all that. It's like people get defensive. They're like, yeah, fuck it. This is my life and this is what I want. And if you're going to keep judging me, I'm going to become even more like, you know, protecting myself from that and separating myself from you. So I think, you know, allowing people to talk about their own experience, trying to question it, is something that's very important. And like, you know, not judging. I also feel like, if you judge the rich people, you judge the poor people. Like the person who makes difference between the poor, the rich, is a person like, you know, that will not talk to the people on the same level or scale or whatever. Do you get what I mean? I just like, I've never wanted to make a difference between, you know, when I was poor, when I'm rich, like, you know, which class I belong to and all that. I know it sounds privileged to say that, but I've really been in all different type of situations in my life, and I'm still, it's like, you know, going up and down all the time. So I feel like there should be more of like almost like it's like we have to invent a new language for people to be able to speak from, you know, from where they are, from where their experience. It's almost like, you know how in America there's all these expressions of like, you know, I don't know, like, how do you say no offense, or like things like that, or there almost should be a thing, you know, that's like, I realize what I'm saying, I realize which bracket of population I'm in, I realize my you know, that I'm not suffering as much as other people are, but here is my experience. There should be a word for that.
Yeah, it's, you know, in Japanese language as well, I feel like they have such good words that like encompass like a feeling like that boil down to one word. But it's so true, G, because I've noticed whenever you check in with somebody, or if you are talking to somebody for the first time amidst this pandemic, and they always go like, how are you doing? You're always like, oh, I'm fine because of the privilege that I have. I'm healthy, I have a place, I have food, like, I do not worry about me. When it's like, no, I had a mental breakdown. So it's so funny, people have been checking in with me. For the people who don't know, I'm by myself in a studio apartment. This is my dog who is taking a nap. And the solo struggle is real, because, you know, I haven't had human interaction in a real, you know, visceral way for a while. And people keep saying, how are you doing? How are you doing? And my response is just like, fine, fine, fine. And then like 3 days ago, my ex, who is still in my life and very close to me, and obviously we were together for 8 years and we know each other really well, we were texting about something totally random. And I was kind of like, you know, when you're just like texting, I was just kind of like blabbering. And he like cut into my blabbering and he said, kid, comma, are you okay? ? And the way that he phrased it, saying, are you okay? I was able to say no. Like, it was so much easier to say, no, I'm not okay. And then he would be like, say more. And I was able to like express the fact that I was not okay. And I started crying. And I then was like, I shouldn't be crying. I'm fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with me right now. But again, that was because I was comparing my suffering to what else is out there, as opposed to just like living in my suffering in that moment, that like, I wasn't okay. I was so lonely. Yeah. And just the way that he phrased the question just like turned the key. And it kind of like inspired me to start asking the question, like, are you okay? As opposed to like saying, how are you? Because people just automatically say fine. Whereas I think when you literally say, are you okay? People are allowed to easily say no. And then like that opens floodgates of like, you know, again, okay, you're allowed to not be okay. You're allowed to be like, no, this is not great for me. Despite the privilege that I recognize that I am in, that we keep having to recognize that we're in, I realize, but there are moments where you're not okay.
And on the flip side of that, I was reading an article just yesterday that a lot of people who are being called heroes right now because they're on the front lines by working in the grocery stores and doing all of this basically manual labor that needs to get done right now are like, don't call me a hero. You don't treat me like a hero when COVID's not happening. Like, I'm not a hero. And the people who are calling them heroes are people that are coming from a place of privilege, that are doing the same thing where they're like quantifying who is right and who is wrong in this space. And I completely understand the frustration that those people are feeling. It seems like
I completely get it.
Yeah.
I completely get it. Completely. Exactly.
It's ridiculous. Obviously, even, you know, we're appreciative of the work that we're doing, but if we really thought they were heroes, they wouldn't be making $16 an hour and working overtime and like making themselves sick. Like, it just, to me, it's crazy, the language that we use in these situations.
But that's what I was saying. It's so condescending. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I feel like we're by trying to be acknowledging, you know, everyone, we're not realizing we're being worse. We're being terribly, you know, condescending, using those words to call, I don't know, calling people heroes that we'll not see anymore the second this is over. There was this French song, you know, of like all the celebrities like thanking the health professionals and all that, and I'm like, I felt a little bit it felt a little bit off, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but I think you're helping me to put my finger on it. I just like, I was like, I would have I wasn't asked to do it, but would I have participated? And I probably would have, because I wouldn't have asked myself the right questions, like how do I want to behave and who am I in this thing. But now that I talk with you, probably like this is probably why I felt it was kind of weird.
The other thing that I think we're seeing a lot of is, obviously there's a lot of charity work that's happening right now, which I think is really good. Like, you know, people organizing, sending meals to hospitals. It's needed. But I also think that social media has bred a culture of people participating in these things so that they can talk about it, so they can feel validated that they are doing something good, rather than just doing it to do the right thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's so much.
That's that.
Yeah, with charity work or with any type of philanthropy work, like you do it more for yourself, unfortunately, than anybody else. And now with the you know, means of social media, you do it and then promote about it so that like other people know the good that you've done. And you're just like, oh, this is so not necessary.
Yeah.
Just do the good when no one's watching. Like be kind when no one's watching. When this is all over, continue to be kind.
Sorry, totally cut the whole thing you said, and I was so interested in it, so I didn't hear. I think I have a shitty connection today. Can you repeat it, and then we can cut it later or something?
Yeah. No, I was just saying that I think in general with any type of philanthropy or charity work, it's unfortunately done more for the benefit of you feeling good than like the charity work itself. And because of the advent of social media, now when you're able to then talk about your charity work and talk about your philanthropy and how you're helping, it just then goes back into that like, you know, selfish way. And so I just hope that people after this, like, it's just a matter of being kind when no one's watching, like to continue to be kind to the quote unquote frontline workers. And, you know, it's just see them after this is over, because apparently this is the first time we're all seeing them.
100%. I totally agree. I mean, Emily and I've been working for so long, and we've seen so many things in that vein of, you know, what's going on with the charities and how much usually so often they're only used to like, you know, further the profile of people and be a place for self-promotion and all that. And unfortunately, it's also going on during, you know, this time. And you know, again, we've become so condescending and so cynical that you know, so sometimes I'm like, well, I know it's, you know, this charity is only a, you know, a play to promote this brand, but if they give a little bit of money to that charity, then it's worth it. And then I'm like, why? How have we become like that? When did we become like that? You know, when did it become? It's like, oh, we're just gonna accept that because, you know, if $1 goes to the charity, then it's good. I don't know if that's a system that we should keep on accepting. You know, that's setting itself up. But it is like that's our kind of our reality right now. And I think this general like arch of shaming, you know, condescending, so, you know, not being able to be real about who we are and what's our situation, and also make mistakes about what we say and all these kind of things. So having to preface everything with like, I know that people are suffering on the front line, but also people are suffering all the time in the world constantly. So, you know, of course, like this COVID is also interesting because it's putting everybody in, we're all in this together. But I feel so it's easier to like read through and be like, you know, this is what I believe in and all that. But when this is gone and, you know, it's kind of gonna fit out, I think it's going to be interesting to see people going back into their own, you know, little world of like what they want to do and all that in terms of charity. So I don't know, I feel like it's very important to it's a very important moment, as you were saying, Veronica, to have very strong self values, you know, like, and just keep with this and not get too sidetracked. And so exactly, like, you know, carrying our values with the way we are with people, the way we are with, I don't know, the people who work with us or work for us, keeping our values in, you know, politically, like everything, like, you know, being very strong in that, and not feeling that we necessarily need to shout it all across, you know, the social media. I mean, that's how I've been feeling. For me, I know that for the first 2 weeks of the crisis and the pandemic, I barely talked because online, because I just didn't know what I was feeling.
Yeah.
You know, and meanwhile, I saw a lot of people that were, you know, like super reacting, sometimes overreacting, and I was like, that's good for them, but I'm really not ready, and I want to keep to myself for a little bit and think this.
I think I read an article today that it was an op-ed that was in the Atlantic, which I've been looking to a lot. I know, G, you and I talked about the Atlantic a little bit. And this goes back to what you were saying about we're all
I think I'm going to get a subscription.
Yeah, it's been so good, but I'll share this article in the show notes, as we say, as we were joking earlier. But this was an article that was about how we've experienced a lot of crises in the last decades, sort of people who are living in this time, starting at 9/11 and going through now. And the rhetoric has changed so much from then that when 9/11 happened, they were saying, like, you know, people really banded together as Americans. We weren't necessarily as divided in so many ways. It felt like it wasn't just a thing that happened to New York, it happened to everyone in the US. And now, because of what's transpired in terms of, you know, what's happening in the economy and how wealth has just spread even further and further over the last years, and how people have become much more populous, even through what's happening with coronavirus and what's happening, you know, with the rhetoric of politics and things like that, it doesn't feel like we're all in this together, because a lot of what we're being fed and what people are talking about is very class divided. It's very politically divided. We're living in a time now where we divide everything up, and you're really like pigeonholing yourself into a category based on how you talk about what's happening. And you feel very attacked by certain people. You feel very embraced by others. And I thought it was a really interesting article, and it talks about some fundamental kind of broken pieces of the system, like we were talking about at the beginning of this. So I'll share it if people are interested in reading it. I thought it was a really good op-ed.
Yeah,
I'm so curious about it too, because I think one thing about in the time we're living in now, to compare it to 9/11 or something similar, like 9/11 had such a easy target of evil that like people banded behind and was like, okay, that is not us, this is us. And obviously families with people in the military and the army and whatnot, they were most affected by it because we went to war, blah, 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 blah. But I think this is one of the first times where the enemy is like amongst us. Yeah. Like, you know, it's a virus that's amongst us, and we really do have to like band together to flatten the curve and whatnot. And to flatten the curve means, you know, and to do that, that is then when you see all this like disparity, you know, coming to a head. Because again, the enemy isn't this like clear target. It's like amongst us that needs to be tampered down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the same way that people have been, to go back to the subject, like, you know, shaming and judging, I think, and the same way I was saying, I think it's very important to stay very close to our personal values. When this started, and I know it happened a little bit here, a lot in France, people started calling the cops on other people to extents that were sometimes scary in what, you know, how people can turn against each other, like their neighbors, instead of, you know, telling them, listen, I'm uncomfortable with this, like calling the cops right away and all that. And I think so I think these type of times are super important to, instead of reacting outside and looking outside, is to connect to our true values of like, okay, who's the person that I want to be? What is she doing right now? You know, is she rushing to do a charity and shout it over the world without checking anything, like who's doing that, where is it going? Or you know, try to make people laugh when it's hard to make people laugh when you don't have a grasp of the situation. And that's also why I can sometimes, it's very important to take the time to think. And I think that's probably I'm not judging the Ellen thing, but like I would say, like maybe take the time and think instead of like, sometimes it's hard, but we need to do that. And I think these are times where it's very, 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 very important to, and that's probably something we don't have so much anymore, because we have this very, such a collective conscience that's happening through social media, that's really hard for people to connect to themselves and be like, well, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to call the cops on my neighbors, because that's not the person I am, and I'm going to figure out how to live through that. Or I'm not going to go judge someone on Instagram, but instead take a step back and remember what are my personal values.
Yeah,
I talked a lot.
No, it was good.
And yeah, I'll share this article. I think it compared Trump at some point to was it Pétain, the president that at the start of World War II in France, that sort of was integral in establishing the whole Vichy sort of regime and whatnot. And it was that similar.
Exactly.
That's what the article talks about, that idea of people ratting on each other, of living in fear, of not like banding together. So I think it's hopefully an article that people will find interesting, but it's exactly that.
I think it's truly interesting, because I think at the end of this, we all need to look into ourselves and see what we've learned. I mean, I know I need that, and I wrote about that in my newsletter, that I really need to make sense of this. And if there is one thing that it taught me, is to stop looking outside to know what I think, and to stop looking at others to know what I think, and to look in that mirror, but instead to and if it means like not looking at the news for a second, and not asking what my friends what they think, or not looking at social media to know what I need to think, then it's good, and then come back and be like, okay, this is my approach of this is how I want to behave, this is how I want to be. And it can evolve, because I'm going to of course I'm not the same person, and I don't have the same ideas about the pandemic that I had in the beginning, because I instructed myself and read and all that, but I tried to stay focused on my values, something that's very important to me.
Yeah, and I think it's really important then, like it'll inform so much of how we slowly come out of this and like reintegrate back into society, that we took the time to think about it during all of this.
Totally.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and I mean, it's also kind of a weird restart for a lot of people, whether some of my friends have lost their jobs. We as a company, are in a big moment of, kind of craziness. Some people just don't want to live like they used to. They, Emily doesn't know if she wants to go back to New York, and things like that, that are really interesting. And so I think it's really an important moment, to question and to see, okay, how am I going to go back? We're lucky we've had that time, if we look at this that way. And so I don't want to just run back into the old ways.
Absolutely.
Totally. I agree.
This was great, guys. Thanks for the deep chat.
We stayed on topic this time. We did pretty good.
I know.
Sometimes we go like this.
That was very good. Yeah, I can't wait to read those stories. So that, and also offline, we were talking about this podcast about what you were saying, Veronica, about the pandemic and the hammer and the dance.
Yeah.
And we'll talk maybe more about that another time. But if you can put it in the show notes, I think our listeners would love to hear.
We will do a whole show note, a link out to some.
And can you put in the show note that we're absolutely aware that we're privileged, and that we salute everyone, and I don't know. Yeah, there should be this thing, It's like it's like when you sign new stuff on iTunes or Google. Yeah, there should be a disclaimer of everything. We know.
I know I'm in a mansion.
Trying to debate and talk about stuff.
Things. It's all good.
So true. I know exactly. All those things. All right, my loves.
All right.
Bye bye, guys.
Bye.